I'm a referee of a negotiation. Um,
Yes.
there's a buyer or a seller or a landlord and a tenant, and they have remarkably different views, different goals, but ultimately they want to come together and do a transaction.
Hello, I'm Doug Newell, and this is Property Pulse. This is a podcast about what's going on in some aspects of the real estate world. Today, I'm fortunate to have a guest who is very knowledgeable about this space, and that is Steve O'Reilly. Steve is with Lennard, and Lennard is headquartered in Canada, does a great deal of business in the Toronto and Ontario area. And Steve, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and then about your company?
Great. So I'm Steve O'Reilly. So I am a real estate agent focused on development and industrial real estate in the greater Toronto area. Have a few clients that are, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I've had several clients who had interests right across the country. And so I have awareness of them, but my primary focus would certainly be Ontario and greater Toronto. To give you a context of the Canadian market, uh, the Canadian market is 10% of the U.S. market. It's into probably 6 centers, Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Ottawa, Calgary, I suppose, and there's secondary and tertiary markets. Typically, we're a little bit of basically we are a strip along the U.S. border,
Right.
but about
And
10% of your size.
but 10% is pretty significant, and that also puts you in the same range as California.
Right.
So it's a big part of the North American market. Can you tell me a little bit about your firm?
Well, Lennard Commercial is full service. The primary focuses, of course, are office leasing, industrial development, and capital markets group that sells large packages, all of those. So I've been focused in industrial leasing and development development land sales for most of the last 20 years.
So does your firm go from sort of raw real estate and build on it, or has the building already been built and you are finding uses and finding clients for it?
Well, much of the our work has been selling raw land in farmland into development to be distribution centers. So, finding a 50 to 100 acre site that, it's usually zoned or secondary plan approved to become employment land. We
Yes.
help, so if a farmer owns it and we are helping sell that into the development community, and 2, 5, 7 years later, it becomes distribution centers.
Let me jump ahead. What kind of tools might you folks have that I'm only passingly familiar with Canadian data? I suspect it's much like American, US data.
Well, what we try to focus on, and I was actually helping a client. He had a property that he was looking to sell or sell lease back in McDonough, Georgia.
Okay.
And again, looking at that, there's how far is the property from, what is it, Interstate 45?
Yes.
How far is it from that? What's the
Yes.
turnoff for? What's the trucking timeline and drayage from site to interstate, and where does it go? Atlanta the Atlanta is a big center itself, and then it's feeding into the Florida area. My
Yes.
understanding is that it's becoming a distribution hub going into North Florida.
Yes.
So then you want to find that sizable chunk of property that is developable, not wetland, not shrubage, decent geotech, and you're also focusing on land that has municipal servicing.
Do you have those same tools that allow you to focus on that, but in Canada that will tell you, okay, for this farmer's field or whatever, how far is it from the nearest sewer line or whatever?
Right.
Or
Right. So what we would be doing, we would be watching for servicing agreements or expanding, where the municipality is putting in water and
uh
sewage and electricity and gas lines and everything else, and then locate, and that will be the future development areas, both employment and residential.
do you have to add that data in some manual process, or again, can you
Yeah,
simply log
again,
in?
we have mapping tools for it, and fitting it
Yep,
in, and matching the site against the service trunks and the like there, and trying to understand what the development charges are to pay the municipality for those services. And
got
then
it.
then
Got it.
mapping how many households can this property get to by truck in an 8-hour shift. Those key. And then there's also employment charts similar to the United States. Blue collar labor is in short supply in
It
in
is.
many places. So
It
to
is.
have a distribution center and not being able to find employees.
Have you come upon any situations where artificial intelligence is applied to sort through all of that information about, the trade-offs between distance between a sewer pipe and access to a market and who knows what other things, topographical things?
Yes, and trying to have an understanding of what the inherent development costs, like the geotech, the quality of the soil, how much
Yes.
fill it's going to need, how much cutting is going to be needed, all of those things, that how much
Right.
wetland. Just simply trying to understand. You've got 100-acre farm, and how much of it can actually be developed based on wetland and bad drainage and
Shape of the property, right?
conservation authority interventions, to use a nice word.
Yep.
So again,
Yep.
as many of those things as can be plotted into an artificial intelligence model is tremendous.
Got it. Got it. So you're focused, or your company's focused almost entirely on commercial properties. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
No, no resident. Well, there's multi-res, of course, and if we can
Yeah.
finding development land that the same farmer may have fields that are residential, but again, we don't get into housing stock, if you will.
Got it. Okay. Uh, what do you think is sort of peculiar or different between our two markets? Again, I think my take is that Canada makes it a little bit more difficult to compile data about a home. Does Canada have some restrictions on data compilation?
There aren't restrictions per se, except that there isn't the databases for it. Like in the US, the CoStar databases, or the LoopNet databases that have all that information, are remarkably robust.
Yes.
Whereas much of the commercial properties, sales, rezoning, all that, it may not travel through an MLS market.
Got it.
So unless someone is reaching right into the titles and registry systems to find out what's going on, the comps and that may not be as readily available as you. But again,
I see.
if you're in those primary and secondary areas, you come up with the sources.
What do you think the obstacles are for growth of Lennard Company?
Well, again, we're going through a remarkably, there are shifting markets. What's the old term? The major change in our markets,
Yes.
between the uncertainty of the office leasing market, how many
Yes.
people are actually working in their office versus some sort of hybrid or work from home type
Right.
scenario.
So that's hit Canada just like the US, where
Exactly. And again, without necessarily the corporate backbone to order people back to work. We
right.
also have a bit of a there is a experienced employee shortage too. You know, that the Gen X person, many of them have enjoyed working from home or working hybridly. Personally,
Yes.
I closely associate the open concept office with the employee reluctance to come back to the office.
So it was sort of a COVID started it out, but then people stuck to it, and businesses are going to have to flex a bit. Some are
And there
flexing
has to
more
be
than others.
some incentive for people to want to work on the site. Like in my experience, very few people, I know myself, I didn't, who wants to work on a 20,000-foot floor plate that is entirely open with everybody has um, a 45-inch bench and not even a panel in front of them where sound
Right.
is, everybody's conversation is within hearing range. So there will be changes around what the office placement looks like too, but they
Is
haven't
office
come yet.
space is office space the majority of your business, or
No, no,
manufacturing? Or
it has shrunk over time. So more
I
of
see.
mine would be industrial. But you see, when COVID brought a huge uptick to distribution and a great demand for industrial real estate distribution centers.
Mm-hmm.
When 2022, 2023, vacancies in all of the primary areas were dipping down to like 2%. And 2% is really less than zero. So
Yeah.
if someone were looking for a new distribution facility, they were booking it coming out of the ground 2 years in advance at least. And rental rates doubled and tripled in that 5-year period, which is quite the shock for the corporate
Yeah.
user of the leasee, if you will. So again,
Interesting.
the increased demand has been wonderful, but the lack of supply and the price shock for the tenant continues to pose a bit of a problem in the market.
So if we could sort of drill down into almost the day to day in your world, what are some of the tasks and challenges and things that suck up a lot of your day and aren't terribly fulfilling because it sucked up a lot of time and you'd like to do more interesting creative things? Or what's a day look like?
Well, instinctively, I'm a referee of a negotiation. Um,
Yes.
a there's a buyer or a seller or a landlord and a tenant, and they have remarkably different views, different goals, but ultimately they want to come together and do a transaction. So again, the toughest one right now, of course, is the leasing transaction, because there are so many unknowns and shortages and expectations, whether it's the tariff uncertainty or interest rate and inflation uncertainty. What
Yeah.
is the development timeline? One of our working with a secondary municipality currently. They're about an hour from Toronto.
Yes.
They have 100-acre industrial park, which they would like to sell. And we are trying to help them understand that the greatest barrier to the project is the 5-year development timeline. It's the zoning and the planning departments, like, our in the Greater Toronto area, which, from talking to people in Philadelphia and Chicago and others there, I think it's similar, that 8 months is sort of the norm for site approval of a property that is zoned for the use.
Mm,
And
wow.
and then there's but then there's site plan approval and the preparation of all the plan and the construction, and then to get it built. There's a 5-year timeline
Really?
minimum between
They're the
purchase
equivalent.
and
Yeah.
revenue.
Are there the equivalent up there of like ombudsman who is somebody who works for the city, whose job it is to cut the 8 months to 6 months or whatever? Somebody
Well,
just,
there isn't. And again, these people are not compensated in a manner that focuses that. Both our federal and provincial governments
yes.
are very focused on that. The new federal government, that is getting, because we have a housing shortage too.
So do
So
we, yes.
getting, similar to certain lots of areas in the States, getting more houses built, and things have to change. So many industries have changed and evolved, and with huge cost savings, but building construction is not one of them.
No,
A house or an office building or whatever is built almost exactly the same way it was in 1970.
yes. In fact, I remember from some presentation at a trade show or whatever, housing industry is evolving at a rate of 2% per year. And other things, artificial intelligence, probably 40% a year, and oil and gas might be 10% a year or something. But housing is a laggard where it just
And
does
and
what it does at a slow rate and very expensive too.
and no one wants to, and there's no promotion of construction trades,
Yes.
in the education process, these people earn very comfortable livings, with
Yes.
with basically, there is as much overtime available to them as they possibly want. It's quite feasible that any any skilled trade could earn $100,000 a year if they apply themselves lots of time, and they have that as long as they want. But
Yeah.
there's no focus for that within the education, and
Right.
again, the barriers to becoming an apprentice or joining a trade, or getting in the training program. So many of those things are being addressed with
Good.
deregulation and tax incentives and that, but it's a challenge.
It's interesting from this conversation. I'm coming upon many, many commonalities. Can you think of anything that's particularly different from your Toronto market and, I don't know, Boston or, something like that?
You have an entrepreneurial sense, in entrepreneurial core in your development community, which we do not. Um, 90+% of the development ownership group is institutional. Pension
Okay.
fund, insurance company, or REIT.
So if you're selling a property to an outsider, yes, there's likely to be management there, but behind the management is likely to be institutional money who is deciding, is this 100-acre property that we're going to build this factory on, is this a good deal?
Well, what's the risk? They
What are the
they
risks?
can look at it and see, the cap rate is 6% or 7% or 8%,
Yeah.
upsides and all that. But what is the risk? And if the risk, there was a tremendous boom in development until 3 years ago. August, September 2023, all the light switches went off.
Really?
Institute and commercial lending was no longer available, and the institutions went away and said, well, we can't predict inflation, we can't predict interest rates, so we're going to sit on our hands. It's
Okay.
and it's almost remarkable, because the market just stopped.
Yes.
Prices didn't go down,
Right.
but
Might this be related to the fact that at least historically, Canada has much more centralized banking than the United States. I mean, you've got what Royal Bank of Canada and Toronto Dominion, and anyway, you've got about five biggies that are probably 80-90% of your market. Whereas here, I might get a loan from, the Bank of Arkansas or something like that.
Well, that's it. There are five big Canadian banks, and they control the vast amount of the market share. But similarly, most of the institutional developers and real estate holders are five insurance companies, six or eight REITs, six or eight municipal pension funds, like CalPERS. It would be
Yes.
the municipal workers of Ontario. There would be the health workers of Ontario. That would be the municipal workers of Alberta or British Columbia. They are the big buyers,
Got it. Okay.
and they don't take risk. I've been involved with groups. One of the big FANG companies looking to find office space for 300,000 feet in a building. Can you get it built?
And you said yes in 5 years?
Well, and the institution is saying, well, we're going to have to take it to the board, and we'll get back to you in a month. And the real estate person from the major FANG company is saying, I'm offering you a 15-year lease for for 300,000 feet in your office building. What do you think? Well, that's a pretty big risk. That would be a primary issue, and the other one would be the I believe our municipal approval rate is slower. And then we have a stronger conservation authority, environmental tone as well.
Got it.
Canada would compare rather closely to, say, Washington State and the Portland area.
Yes. Yes. I can see that's a very apt comparison. So again, I'm picturing your website in my mind and the little circles, and it's like, as you said, along the U.S. border, southern Ontario, I think they call it the Golden Horseshoe and
Golden Horseshoe, yeah.
Toronto area. Are you folks considering expanding Quebec? Do you have an office in Montreal?
Yes, we have an office in Montreal and Quebec City. The Montreal market is doing very well. But again, they suffer from land again, a little too much office, not enough distribution centers. And again, so that they were smaller bay facilities was the norm in the Montreal area. Now they're not interested in building, 50,000 square feet would be the minimum now, which is a rather major change.
Yes. You're awash, excuse the pun, in hydro power.
Yes. Quebec especially.
Are you putting up lots of data centers to do AI number crunching and things like that?
The province of Quebec will be the obvious location for that, with their hydroelectric plants, and they feed off of, if you know where Newfoundland, Labrador is.
Yes.
And the long range, their power generation model is close to, off the top of my head, I would say it's about 25% of the cost of most people's production. That's with 50-year generating projects.
Okay. So that should be a hot spot.
Well, it's actually a colder climate too, Doug. So, there's less air conditioning involved too.
I hadn't even thought about that aspect of it. I just thought that I know they suck massive amounts of power, and that having lived in New Hampshire for a while, Quebec is a source of power for New England.
Yeah, and
coming down hydro Quebec.
That's a huge consideration for us all now. Where are we going to get the increased electricity? And the grid doesn't manage it. Taking away, just introducing electric cars and vehicles, if they were to be popular, the grid is full, let alone all the hotels.
Huh?
So in my opinion, we're going to need the natural gas. We're going to need nuclear. We're going to need wind. We're going to need solar. We're going to need all of those things.
No downturn in demand. It's just straight up.
And, to be not to be promoting solar or wind-based sources, but there's been a lot of work done in those in the last 10, 15 years. My understanding is the technology is ready to turn the sharp line of the hockey stick and become available and cost effective.
So, in your world of commercial real estate, if we jumped forward 5 years, are we going to notice differences? And if so, what do you think those would be? It's still, as we've talked about, it's a people business where you are smoothing the rough edges so that a buyer and a seller can come together, right?
Well, I think
Are there
there's going to be
tools that you think are going to dominate, or
well, certainly the managing of product within a facility is going to continue to evolve. If we don't have the employment land readily near our big municipalities, then we have to build taller and more efficient distribution centers, with
okay?
picking and management facilities, just better utilized distribution facilities.
Interesting.
And most of the warehouses and distribution centers that were built more than 20 years ago, it's very difficult to reconfigure them for the modern world. They're they're not really designed for the truck traffic that's required or the
Yes,
flow.
yes. I would like to thank you for participating today. You have filled in part of my ignorance on the real estate market. I've never looked at things from your commercial perspective, and hearing you talk about it has been a delight and very useful. And I hope you found it helpful in some way. And again, I'd like to thank you.
Okay,
So
thanks, Doug.